You are all welcome to today's class. We are going to learn about how employees can be trained and developed in the organization. So by the end of the lecture, students are expected to assimilate the concept of training, and they should also be able to differentiate it from development. Then we'll also learn about the need for employee training. In other words, what sort of objectives or relevance does the training of employees seeks to achieve? Thereafter, we will consider the typologies of employee training, mainly on the job and off the job training. We will then consider the process that are involved in the training of employees. Then we will switch onto the specific approaches or methods that can be used to train employees both on the job and off the job. We will then switch to the development component of the lecture, wherein we will consider the specific methods that can also be used to develop employees. So the concept of training and development. Depending on the text that you read, training may be treated in its broader sense to cover development. But it is proper at this level, we take our time to demarcate and understand what it means to be training employees and what it also means to be developing employees. So training, it is essentially a process whereby people acquire the requisite skills, knowledge, and capabilities, which are intended to aid in the achievement of organizational goals. So anytime an attempt is made to enhance the knowledge, skills, and abilities of employees so that it will furnish them or sharpen them to be in a position to achieve the organization's goals, then we are generally talking about training. Now, because the process is tied to varied organizational purposes, training can be analyzed from two main perspectives, whether in the narrow sense or in the broader sense. So when we say we are analyzing training in the narrow sense, what does it mean? And when we say we are considering it also from the broader sense, what does it mean? In the narrow sense, training provides employees with specific identifiable knowledge, skills, and abilities for them to use on their present job. So invariably, I'm attempting to compare training with development. So let's take it one more time. In the narrow sense, training provides employees with specific identifiable knowledge, skills, and abilities, which are expected to be used on their present job. Conversely, development can be viewed in the broader scope. So when we try to analyze training in terms of its broader scope, then we are talking about development. So anytime the focus of the training or the education of the workforce, some of you still have your microphones on. Alice, this is the last time. I'm not going to be announcing this like that. Anytime an attempt is made to educate employees in its broader sense so that they will have general knowledge that can be used to perform not only their current job, but their future jobs as well. Then we are talking about development. So let's compare it once again. In the narrow sense, we are referring to what's training, because the emphasis is on assisting employees to acquire some specific knowledge, skills, and abilities. And the acquisition of these skills or know-how is expected to be used in carrying out their present job. On the other hand, when it comes to development, it refers to training in its broader scope. And the focal area of the training is that the individuals are expected to acquire some kind of knowledge, skills, and abilities that can be used in carrying out their present job and their future job. Okay, so development is a process of essentially preparing employees for positions and improve their personal skills that can handle critical situations in an organization. Now, let's look at the distinction proper. From the preceding slide, it can be derived that unlike training that takes the form of some short education to prepare employees for their present jobs, development is rather taking the form of a long-term education. So it can be a lifetime activity that you'll be engaging in, just to sharpen you for both present job and future job. Now, in terms of scope, training tends to also focus on a definite purpose. So training seeks to achieve a particular aspect of one's need, so that once you're able to attain this need, it will help you to perform a given task. So the focal area of training is usually narrow, but development tends to be general or broader. So you are being prepared for a lifelong. That is why it takes quite longer before it suffices to say that someone has actually developed. Any questions so far? Okay.
Yeah, so there can be training without development.
Yes, there can be training without development. And development is the broader umbrella beneath which we can find training.
Okay, sir.
Any other question? Okay, so let's make progress. What are the objectives or importance of training and development? So if you see T&D, I'm referring to training and development. And most of the emerging texts or literature that are coming out these days, they use development. They don't treat it as training and development. They actually caption it as human resource development. And in there, an aspect is dedicated in treating training, and an aspect is also dedicated in treating development. But at this level, it's important we demarcate it this way for you to appreciate the specific things we'll be talking about. So this one, I'm sure you are already familiar with some of the issues that are involved in it. So why is it important for an organization to pump huge sums of money in educating or nurturing its workforce? What are some of the benefits that it stands to attain as an organization, and how do the individuals involved also stand to benefit from the training exercise? So there may be more interesting ones which are not presently here, but for the purpose of this class, we will be tackling the 7 thematic areas. But beyond this, you can also reach further and add some on. The first benefits that can be derived from T&D is that it assists employees to become much more effective in the performance of their present job. Effectiveness in their present job. So when employees are taken through some form of training or development interventions, it is envisaged that it will sharpen the skill sets of these individuals and help them become more effective in terms of their job performance. And this presupposes that if hitherto they were encountering some form of errors in the course of their performance, the training is expected to address these challenges in order to make them more effective. The second one is that it is also expected to improve the quality and quantity of productivity. The quality and quantity of productivity. The presumption in this second point is that if you want to adhere to a specific standard and quantum in your production line, then it is expected that you also put in place training that will elevate the performance of your workforce to the attainment of this particular quality and quantity. So training will be the guideline that will lead your workforce towards the attainment of desired outcomes, which is the quality and quantity of productivity. The third one is that training can help in the creation of favorable attitude, loyalty, and cooperation. So if you want to create a work climate which is fraught with loyal workforce, cooperative workforce, then it suffices to say that training them to understand why it is imperative for them to become loyal and cooperative to the ideals of the organization will be the order of the day. And this training will not only open their eyes to understand the need for this kind of attitude from them, but it will also help them to understand why it will be beneficial to themselves and that of the organization. Then reduce wastage and breakage. So this one, it is in red ink because depending on how you are analyzing the training, it can be explained in the positive sense and also in the negative sense. So ideally, when employees are given rigorous training, and this enhances their mastery of their job performance, it is expected that the minor errors which they were committing previously, and that was resulting in wastages of the raw materials or resources, as well as the breakages in the course of executing the task, will be reduced. So that is the benefits that we can derive when we implement a training and development intervention. Conversely, it could also be explained that when you commence the training of employees, particularly in the organizational premises as the work ensues or the work proceedings continue, those that are now understudying the matured members of the organizations have the likelihood of committing some errors because they are now learning. And so because they are experimenting to learn on the job, there is a likelihood that they may end up wasting some of the raw materials in the course of learning or the resources, and they may also engage in some form of breakages. So it could also be explained as a drawback to training employees on the job. Later on, when we get to the benefits and drawbacks of on-the-job training, it will become clearer. Then it helps employees in their personal development and advancement by helping them to acquire additional qualification for a better job. In most career ladder, promotional decisions are contingent on the sort of preparations that individual employees try to use to develop their horizon. And so if you are working in a company and the business environment is changing, new and more sophisticated ways of performing your tasks are emerging, but you are still glued to the traditional ways of working, then it will come to a point in time of your career life where when you are being considered for promotion and they are perusing your credentials, you may not have what it takes to merit the promotion in terms of the qualification you are having. And so some of these periodic training and development interventions, which are run by the organization or they are pursued by the individual employees to boost their qualification, can be an avenue that will assist them in terms of their personal development and advancement in their career. The sixth one is that it also helps organizations to respond to dynamic market conditions and changing consumer demands. So, as I mentioned earlier on, the only thing which is constant in the business environment is change. And in order to catch up with these changing needs from organizational practices and consumer tastes and preferences, it is also necessary that from time to time, employees go through some refresher courses in a form of training and development. And these activities or interventions are cardinally designed to align the expertise of employees with the present needs of the business environment, so that as and when you assimilate some of this information or knowledge, it will equip you to address the needs of your dynamic market as well as that of your consumers. Say, satisfy human resource planning requirements. So when we were learning about human resource planning, one of the things that we learned is that human resource planning activities assist the organization, particularly the managers, to be furnished with information on the number of people that will be required to perform a given task, the quality of these employees. So when I say quality, in terms of their knowledge, skills, and abilities, qualification, and experiences. And human resource planning is also about the timing, where at what point in time will you actually need the services of these employees, and at what place or what position in the organization. So if the information we derive from human resource planning suggests that there are certain core skills that we need to abreast our workforce with, then training will step in as an intervention to fill these skills gaps. In other words, human resource planning may suggest that in order for us to achieve our mission or long-term ideals, there is the need for us to for instance, introduce our workforce to a computerized way of processing information. And that means that at the moment, they may be using the traditional or the manual way of processing information. So the relevance of training in such a situation or addressing human resource planning requirement is that it will help the manager to address the skills gap. And the skills gap in this context will be the knowledge that employees will require in order to transition onto the use of some form of technology in processing information. So you can look at it from several angles. And these are some of the things that training and development interventions seeks to achieve. And it can also be construed as the importance of training and development. Now, the typologies of employee training. So we are going to concentrate on the training bit, and later on, we will move on to the development bit. In fact, at this level, right, you don't need these demarcations, but I'm not sure how the questions will look like. So let me treat it this way so that you can put it into their right perspectives. So, yes, Paul Alpha. Paul, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Please, is it important for employer to send his employee for training?
Come again.
I said, is it important for employer to send his
employees to training? Yes. So that means you were not following all that I was saying in the preceding slides. All these will address the question that you are asking. It is presumed that training, taking your workforce for a training program will help sharpen their skills to be more effective on their present. So essentially, all these things will answer the question you are asking, which means you are not following what I was saying. Okay.
I've got it now. Thank you, sir.
Now, the typologies of employee training. Generally speaking, there are two main types or forms in which training can take. We have the on-the-job training and off-the-job training. And off-the-job training essentially means that the training is occurring as and when the work is being carried out. And off-the-job training means that the training is occurring outside the working proceedings. So it could be within the same organization, but maybe in a conference room where someone is giving a lecture or a presentation. Off-the-job training could also be outside the organizational premises in a classroom like we are having. Okay, unless some of you are currently at your offices and doing something in relation to what we are doing. Other than that, this can be construed as off-the-job. So let's take them one by one. And because you'll be answering objective questions, please try and understand them. Don't go and chew anything, because you may end up having some of the questions carved in such a way that if you do not have the thorough understanding, you may be picking the wrong answers. So on-the-job training. This is the form of training that occurs within the organization. You see, I did not end there. It occurs within the organization, and I continue that as the work is ongoing. So this indicates that if for instance, we are training a typist and a secretary to improve in terms of their typing speed. But this training is being done in the conference room of the organization, whereby the typist is not practically engaging in any form of typing activity, but rather listening to an expert typist to speak. That will not be on the job training, because the activity is occurring in a setup in the organization, but the work that actually connects with the typing is not being carried out. So once again, on the job training is a form of training that ensues or occurs within the organization as the work is ongoing. Now, this training tends to be viewed as being very applicable to the job, because, in other words, what are some of the benefits that the employee themselves and their organization stand to achieve when they subscribe to on-the-job training program? One, it saves the cost of sending employees away for training. So if you compare the situation whereby employees will be trained within the organizational premises as the work is ongoing, and you compare it to maybe transporting them from the company's premises to another facility, maybe a conference room of another hotel. If you do this comparative analysis, you realize that you'll be saving more when you run the training program in your organization, because you'll be foregoing the transportation costs, the cost of hiring the conference room at the hotel, the how do you call it? The refreshments that will also come with the activities over there. You will be foregoing all those things. So on that basis, we can comfortably say that on the job training program helps to save the cost of sending employees away for training. Now, it often avoids the cost of outside training. So this one too is quite debatable, but the presumption on the job training is that you are going to be trained by your supervisor or your co-worker who is very much knowledgeable and experienced in carrying out that given task. Okay, so that is where this point is coming from. But in situations where we do not have an expert internally, and so we have to rely on the expertise of an outsider, then we will still have to cater for at least the appearance fee of such a facilitator. Then transfer of knowledge becomes easier. When we transfer of knowledge simply means that you are trying to connect what you have learned onto the work that you do. So if you compare the efficacy of transferring knowledge from on-the-job training to that of on-the-job training, research contends that because the environment where the individual will be learning under on-the-job training program is quite familiar and relevant to the job that they are doing, it becomes much easier for them to transfer the knowledge. In other words, when the facilitator leaves or when the supervisor is no longer there, but you are expected to do as it is expected, the transitioning becomes much easier as compared to off the job. And it is quite challenging under off the job because sometimes the setup over there may not be modified after the working environment where you currently work. And so it may just be a normal classroom and there may not be adequate learning resources in terms of the things that you can use to practicalize some of the nuances or details of your task. And so if you compare on the job to that of off the job, transfer of knowledge is quite easier under on the job because the learning environment is much relatable as compared to off the job where you may be carrying it out in a hotel premises and so on and so forth. So these are some of the benefits of on the job. Now let's look at some challenges or drawbacks. So however, trainees who are learning while working can incur costs in the form of loss of customers, broken equipment, into mobile career, wastages. I highlighted one of them as red. So when customers are patronizing an organization's services, they do not care whether you are now training or orienting people. At the end of the day, they want to be satisfied. And so if in the course of attending to some customers, you are not able to meet their level of satisfaction, then it can result in what we call customer attrition. In other words, when you are not able to satisfy, you incur some shortfalls in the course of training an employee whilst also trying to satisfy a customer. This dissatisfied customer may end up leaving your company altogether, particularly if the issue is not properly resolved. And because the training is occurring at the workplace and individuals are experimenting with the work resources available, it may end up getting some of them broken and some resources also being wasted in the course of the experimentation. And when this is not also properly managed, when I say properly managed, when you, the individuals that are understudying are unnecessarily chastised for the breakages and the wastages, they may also get frustrated. Okay, so these are some of the drawbacks of on-the-job training. Abigail.
Sir, please, I wanted to ask, with the on-the-job training, you said something that it's often avoid the cost of outside training. So I'm asking, is it always compulsory that they pick someone within the organization, which is a supervisor, to train them? Is it compulsory that it is so?
Okay, so I get your question now. The thing is that it will be cost effective. It will be rational in terms of economics. It will make rational sense that you pick someone from within the organization if they have what it takes to train employees on a particular area. But if you scan within the organization and you do not have the individuals with requisite expertise to handle a particular training program, that is where you will have to go outside to bring such experts on board. Because it wouldn't even make sense that you already have people that are knowledgeable and very much skillful in a particular area, but you bypass them to go and bring someone from outside to come and do the training. It wouldn't make economic sense, and it also wouldn't make, it wouldn't even incentivize people that are knowledgeable in the company to be sharing ideas, because instead of using them to at least help them get that recognition on their profile that they have assisted in some capacities to train in the company, you are rather going outside to bring someone who you are going to also pay and resource to carry out such an activity. Abigail, is your question answered?
Sir, please, the main reason why I asked is that sometimes you may train your employees, but the personnel that you need may not be available at that moment. So
When you say
our
personnel, do you mean the experts?
yes,
Or who?
sorry, the
Ah,
expert.
so if they are not available, then that one, you don't have to compromise quality. You have to seek for an outsider one to intervene. And that was exactly what I was explaining.
Okay, so
So it
it doesn't actually avoid costs.
which one? Hey, internet said that all that I was explaining, you were not following. So I said
So
that this particular one, the customer, if you are using you have someone with the expertise internally and you are using them, then you will be avoiding these costs. But in situations where you do not have the requisite expertise, that one you cannot be, when you bring these experts to come and facilitate your program, you will have to resource them financially. So it depends on the issue you are analyzing.
okay.
Ernest Sampana.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh,
Sir, please, I
go.
didn't get this one well.
Which one?
Is a trainees who are learning while working
Trainees who are
can
learning
incur
while
costs in
working.
the form of lost customers. The lost customers and broken. Yes, please. I didn't get it well, please.
So the presumption over there is that when you are, let me use an example in the bank premises. Assuming we are now training new tellers that we have hired, okay? And because the tellers are now understanding from maybe their supervisor or their co-workers, they ended up committing some mistakes in terms of serving the bankers, the individuals that are coming to patronize the services of the bank. And this issue is not properly handled. It can result in you losing this particular customer who is not satisfied with the services they are getting from this trainer in question. So that is the angle we are coming from. So this presupposes that, as depending on the delicacy of the training in question, you don't have to leave the trainees on their own, but they must constantly be paired and monitored, even when they start serving customers. And that is how you can handle some of these issues. Mr. Yeboah.
Sir, I want to talk about avoid the cost of outside training.
Okay.
From personal experience.
Okay.
I work at immigration.
Okay.
So at first we were sending officers from immigration to Asuchare, which is the military camp, for additional training.
Okay.
So they were charging us a lot. So it got to a time our commander decided to send instructors rather to acquire knowledge and come and help us at the training.
Precisely.
So we have avoided the cost of sending officers to Asuchare rather. So we are training the officers at our training center now to avoid that cost.
So that is actually one of the interventions you can use to avoid some of these costs. So whereby the facilitators or the instructors you already have in place will be equipped to have what it takes to retrain the workforce. So it is actually done. In even those in the banking sector, what they do is that all their T&D experts are resourced to go and learn from these Ivy League, or if you like, state-of-the-art facilities, so that when they come back, they can be implementing all that you are expected to gain when you go outside to get some of this knowledge. And they can also be running it for other institutions. So that is why this bank, when it eventually collapsed, I couldn't make sense of it. The former UT Bank, because they grew to a point in their operation where they were even running training programs recruitment exercises for other banks. Okay, so that is actually a way of avoiding this cost. Thank you very much. I think there was one more. Amache, was your hand up earlier on? Mr. Amache?
Yes, sir.
Go on.
So my hand was not up.
Oh, okay. Then it's okay. You can mute your mic, then we'll make progress. Into Yanko of the job training program. Essentially, this is the type of training programs which are carried out outside the normal job proceedings of the organization. So any form of training activity which is carried out outside the work premises can be construed as an off-the-job training program. And in the strict sense of it, okay, you are at this level, Kran. We don't need all these details. External training occurs for several reasons. So what are some of the factors that would necessitate for a company to opt for off-the-job training instead of on-the-job? One is that when you compare the amounts that will be involved in carrying it on your organizational premises with that of the job, comparatively, it is possible that another facility or setup may be running it at a less expensive rate. So if you do this cost-benefit analysis, then you realize you'll be better off to take it outside, then it may become an avenue for you to save money. And that is why we are saying that it may be less expensive for an employer to have an outside trainer conduct the training in areas where internal training resources are limited. Then there may not be sufficient time to develop internal training materials. In some situations too, you realize that you may have the experts all right that can run the program, but at the end of the day, it is supposed to be, the training program is supposed to be guided by some training manuals in terms of learning materials and our brochures, which the individuals can from time to time refer to in order to refresh their memory on what they have learned. But time may not be on the side of the company to thoroughly develop all these materials. And so in order to dedicate their precious time onto much more pressing issues, much more important issues, they may decide to opt for the off-the-job training program. And the third one is that in terms of expertise, you may not have people with the requisite level of expertise to carry it out. And so in such circumstances, you may need to either outsource it or fall on a subject matter expert to come and carry it out for you. And that may result in you using or opting for the off-the-job training program. And sometimes too, when you go for some of these seminars or workshops, as far as off-the-job training programs are concerned, it provides a conducive environment for employees from all walks of life to interact and share ideas. And this kind of peer-to-peer interaction may also serve as an avenue for them to informally learn in such a formal environment. So that may also be an avenue you can gain from off-the-job training, unlike off-the-job training where you are interacting with individuals that you are already familiar with. So there is the higher likelihood of you experiencing in-group thinking, whereby the way things are expected to be done within that organization will continually be followed. But as you go to the other training centers under the off-the-job training programs, that provides an avenue for you to get different perspectives of handling the same issue you are confronted with in your organization. Now, let's quickly look at the training process. Training process. Okay. I've seen a hand up. Peter Abrokwa.
Yes, sir.
Peter, speak up, okay? I can't hear you well.
Okay. Sir, please, I wanted to ask, let's say maybe you personally, you are an advisor to, let's say, a manager in a company. Which of these two training methods would you encourage him to do?
Okay, it will depend on the skills that we intend to imbibe in the employees. If it is such that it can be run by the company for them to easily transfer the knowledge onto the job that they are doing, then why not? We can easily roll it out in our organization. But in circumstances where after every training program, there is something that we call training evaluation. And sometimes certifications are also offered for your performance and I say your participation in this training program. So if the level of certification that we derive is such that it is supposed to be maybe a diploma, a degree certificate, or a master's certificate, then that one, it means that we may not be able to handle it internally. So it depends on the kind of things that we want our individuals to assimilate, and also some of these considerations, such as the certification that comes with it.
Because for me, actually, I was thinking, say, like for on-the-job training, I see it to be natural. Like, so far as you're in the company and then you are doing this, probability of you learning something it comes naturally. So I don't see it to be very important for you to
go
pay
outside.
much attention to. Yes.
But
because when you are working.
Okay, I get where you are coming from. But the issue is that whereas on-the-job training will assist you to assimilate the practicalities, sometimes the reasoning behind these practicalities may not even be available, easily provided by the one that is giving it to you at the workplace. And that is why it becomes necessary for you to, when it comes to the certification part, you look for avenues that can actually give you some of these background to it. In Tinehono Nebia, you may need to go to the universities, the bodies that actually carry these ones out and provide you the evidence that you have participated in it. So it still go back to the issue of what you want to achieve at the end of the day.
Thank you, sir.
Sampana.
Sir.
Sampana.
Sir, please, you made mention of, sir, you said having the training outside is less expensive. Please, I don't really get it, because I believe it will be more expensive than it being less expensive.
That is why I said it depends. So have you heard about outsourcing centers? So there is something that we call outsourcing centers, and I say all the outsourcing agents. These days, there are specialized institutions that run training programs which may be required by organizations. Okay, so when it comes to, for instance, the training of drivers, and when it comes to training drivers, even though you can carry out in your own organization from the experts in there are driving institutions that can also give you competitive pricing. So whereas maybe when you are carrying it out in your company, you may pay X amount before someone gets a particular certification, they may be able to offer you a much competitive pricing. And that is the angle we are analyzing it from. So it depends on how much the cost you will incur in terms of organizing your resources to deliver the training program, and the cost that will also be incurred by another party, an outside one, when they also procure your, they decide to run it for you. Hello, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was on the training process. The processes that one goes through before we can conclude that you have actually trained, you have actually been trained. There are 5 main, okay, so this is the ideal sense. Somewhere level 300 and 400, no, some of these things will be broken down, but at this level, we can say that ideally there are 5 main stages or processes that we go through in order to offer training to employees in an organization. The first one is what we call training needs analysis, followed by training design, then validation of the training program. In fact, validation, they require a kind of pre-testing and piloting of the training program, followed by implementation of the program and evaluation and follow-up. So let's take it one by one. Now, depending on the book you are reading, the first stage may also be characterized as assessments, and as a needs assessments. So any form of assessment that is made to ascertain the needs of employees, which training is expected to resolve, you can call it assessment or training needs analysis, and as a training needs assessment. So you can one by one. So TNA, training needs assessment or training needs analysis, is primarily the processes which are used to ascertain or verify whether the training program is necessary. So it's very, very simple. Any means that we use to ascertain or verify the necessity of the training program can be construed as training needs analysis. In other words, we don't want to end up designing a robust training program, but only later on found out that the problem that we are even trying to use training to resolve can actually be resolved with, let's say, motivation, or it can be resolved with the provision of working gears, and as a work resources. So it is important that before you roll out a particular training program, you should be able to confirm that the training content will help resolve some challenges or inadequacies that are that can be handled through training. For instance, if the non-performance of your employees is because the lighting system at the workplace is poor, then I'm sorry to say that training will never be able to resolve that, because we are talking about poor lighting system. And I say maybe they need a particular type of computer to work. and you are providing a less sophisticated one, then training will never be able to address it. So the basic objective of training needs analysis is to determine if training is what? Necessary. Now, it also identifies specific job performance skills that are needed to be improved or corrected to address performance deficiencies whilst also increasing productivity. There is the possibility that when we conduct performance appraisal, okay, there is a high possibility that the deficiencies which employees are demonstrating, and it is as a result affecting their job performance, is because their knowledge and skills in certain respects are not up to standard. Okay, it could be that where they are coming from, they do not have this particular knowledge, and the knowledge can be beefed up through training. So if we want to enhance, let's say, the typing speed of a secretary, okay, and the performance appraisal record of the secretary is such that he or she is very, very slow in terms of typing, and we want to address this through training, then it suffices to say that we must have compared the actual performance of the secretary against the standard that was set for the secretary. And this significant difference, and as a variation between their actual performance and the standard of the secretary's performance, can be addressed through training. If that is the case, then performance appraisal records and the deficiencies that were identified on it is also serving as a pointer that should be included in the training program. So essentially, training needs analysis helps the trainer to know which aspects he or she is supposed to concentrate on. Until when you are developing the training program now, the training needs analysis will help you to gather some amount of information which will be used in designing a more suitable training program. When training programs are designed and as they are preceded by training needs analysis, when the participants come now, you realize that you are actually meeting their need. It is something that they require. But if the training program is designed by the HR in his own office without considering what the workforce actually needs, a mobile program now, you may actually be replicating something and knowledge that they already have. So it is important for you to commence your training program. That is the first stage, is to conduct training needs analysis so that you'll be supplied with information about what is actually needed to be included in the training program and the necessity of the program. 5 methods can be used to gather needs assessment information. Who can tell me one of them? 5 research methods can be used to gather needs assessment information. We are saying that before we carry out any training program, we need to, first of all, verify from the employees and also peruse their appraisal records to ascertain whether the training is necessary. And there are certain criteria that we can use to gather this information. So how can we gather this information? Someone should try and let me see if you've been reading your notes. Wait, may I try?
By interview.
Come again.
By interview.
Very good. Interview. Yes. Observation. Anastasia. Anastasia, and when you want mark. What did you say?
By job analysis.
By job analysis. Okay, yeah. So job analysis can also help you to know the job analysis information will help you to know. And what again?
So,
logbook.
Sir, performance.
Logbook can also help you. Performance what? Obi can perform.
Sir, job performance. Performance.
So yeah, questionnaire is correct. The job performance is I would rather prefer ABA. The commentaries and answer the expectations that the employees will make in their appraisal record. I'll say when you do a proper appraisal system, there is almost always a component that requires the individual employee to stipulate their developmental goals for the year and the things that they will need to be able to attain those developmental goals. So sometimes the employees will put in there that maybe in order to successfully achieve my developmental goal A, which is maybe to be able to use a particular software, I need to start my ABA chartering program. And as I need to attain a particular computer schools. So when you look at some of these things and you realize it is cutting across, and I say it is a common theme that almost all your employees are putting across, then it will be necessary for you to run such a program for them. And that is why performance appraisal should never be used as an avenue to punish employees, because when you analyze the content thoroughly, employees will be communicating a lot of things to you as a supervisor or as a manager. And it will also help you to communicate back to them on how well they are faring on the job, where they went wrong, and how those avenues you are going to help them to address such deficiencies. Okay. Into methods in the baby. With me, you interviews, survey questionnaires, observation, document examination, and focus group discussion. So I think the new things over here, which you are not familiar with, focus group discussion. So focus group discussion is just like conducting interviews, but unlike in interview situations where you will be dealing with the employees on one-on-one basis, the focus group discussions, you may decide to meet maybe members of a particular department and are members of a particular unit and interact with them as a group, unlike individuals. So one of the benefits of this focus group discussion is that when one of the group members raise an issue for discussion, this issue can be thoroughly expanded by other members in the group. Maybe Alpha will start raising the issue, then Sampana will also escalate it to another level, then Abigail will take it with a different spectacle. So by the time you leave the discussion forum, every team will be thoroughly discussed or treated. But the challenge with focus group discussion is that if you have individuals with domineering personality, and I say what we call extroverts and extroverted personality types now, they may end up championing all the discussions which will ensue. Until who raise the topic, we are going to Omafa, and they will be moving left, right, center with it. Whereas the individuals that have low sense of worth and a low self-esteem in terms of personality, so like I said, they are the individuals that tend to be introverts. They may have equally good points to share, but because of the environment and the intimidation they are experiencing, they may not be able to voice it out. So that is the focus group discussion. You can also use documented examinations. So day in and day out, a lot of records are being kept on employees, and this includes our attendance records, the number of people that are leaving the organization and those that are joining, the number of accidents that we are recording, appraisal records, so that if you verify that you are incurring a particular type of accident, okay, at the work premises, which is as a result of the employees not using the requisite, maybe protective clothing and as a protective working gear, then it suffices to say that you can use training to furnish their awareness and knowledge and usage of such protective materials or resources. Okay, so that is how documented examination may also serve as a pointer of gathering training needs analysis information. So these interviews will give you pointers on which aspects of the employee's job that they will require you to train them on. Questionnaires may also be delivered to large number of workforce for them to indicate which aspects of the job that they want some training to be run in order to equip them more. Then observation. So you yourself, you can be moving around to observe whether they are doing the right thing, where they are falling short, and how you can use maybe training to address some issues. Then focus group as well as documented examinations. Okay, so we are still on training needs analysis now. So far, I have explained that training needs analysis is conducted to ascertain whether it is, in the first place, important for us to use training to address a particular deficiency or inadequacies of employees. Therefore, if the causage of employees' job non-performance or inadequacies in terms of performing their duties is as a result of inadequate work resources, such as poor lighting, poor working logistics, then training will not be an apt way of addressing such needs. But when we use some form of methods to gather training needs analysis information, we are able to ascertain that we can actually use training to resolve a particular problem which are being confronted by the employees. Then we can go ahead to conduct three main types of analysis. These include organizational analysis, person analysis, and task analysis. Organizational analysis, person analysis, and task analysis. So essentially, organizational analysis seeks to align how the training program can help the organization to achieve their strategic imperatives. Also, every organization have the long-term goals that they stand to achieve. And so conducting organizational analysis will help you know whether the current workforce you have what it takes to be in a position to achieve this long-term aspiration. So that will be the organizational analysis. And it focuses more on the corporate strategy and also the long-term aspirations of the organization and how training can be used to address it. Then we have person analysis. Person analysis. So at the organizational analysis, the discourse is at the organizational level. So we are treating the organization as an entity. At the person analysis, we are decoupling the individual employee from even the task that they are performing and also the organization that they are performing in. So if you pick each employee, what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Are their current skills and competencies a match for the job that they are doing? If it is not a match, then what can be done through training to equip them in terms of their knowledge, skills, and abilities to have what it takes to excel on the job? So at the personal analysis, whereas my needs may be on how to use maybe a particular software, the needs of Sampana may be on how to get ACCA certification for the job that he is doing. Then the needs for Yebua may be how to use protective clothing whilst working. So at the person level, there may be some variations in the needs of every employee. Now, task analysis. At task analysis, an attempt is made to elevate the discourse from the individual level onto the particular job which is being performed. And the reason why we elevate the discourse to this level is that when we are designing jobs, we don't design it around a single individual. We design it in such a way that if today I am not here, there should be another person that can equally come around and perform the job that I am doing. So at task analysis level, an attempt is made to decipher how a given job is expected to be performed and what one needs to be successful in performing such job, so that the information over there, if the current crop of employees are not having them, then training will be used as an avenue to address it. Any questions so far on training needs analysis or TNA? Okay. Tianko designing the program. Now, when you get to this second stage, the presumption is that the issue that we are going to use the training program to resolve can actually be addressed through training, but it is not as a result of any logistical inadequacies. It is also assumed that we have conducted training needs analysis and we are furnished with relevant information that can be used in designing. Into all the information that you get from Ehano, who drew designing of the programmer, you are expected to incorporate them. What I mean by incorporate them is that if your training needs analysis suggested that you need to run a customer relations program for your workforce, for them to be retooled and reoriented on the need to relate properly with their customers, then when you come over here, it should be one core objective that the training program should seek to achieve. So effective training objectives should state the benefits to the organization, departments, individuals that will all be involved. So that is why usually when you pick some of these brochures, they stipulate that by the end of this program, the organization stands to benefit in X respects. The department, which is also sending out employees, will be able to improve their effectiveness in terms of attainment of their target. Then the individuals that will also participate in the program will be equipped with certain knowledge, skills, and abilities, and that will also help them improve in terms of their deliverables. And the outcome of the training or learning objective can be categorized into three main respects. the instructional objective, which is the learning objective, and I say what the training program seeks to achieve, then organizational and departmental objectives. So beyond what the trainings will be, the training intends to impact, what does the organization also seek to achieve? So organization-wise, we can be talking about their profit motives, whether the return on investment in the training program is going up or it is static, and I say it is going down. Okay. Department-wise, we can also be comparing the output of the department prior to the training program and post the training program to see whether the training has actually yielded favorable results for that department. Then individual, at the individual level too, we expect to see some improvements in their deliverables. If you compare it prior to the program and post the program, we expect to see a significant change and a positive one as such. Then the third one is validation. So it is important for a training program that has been successfully designed and targeted at meeting the needs or addressing the needs of employees to be piloted and as a pre-tested. This validation or piloting will serve as an avenue for the trainers to get prompt feedback on whether the content of the training program and its objectives actually addresses the needs of the trainees. So the validation component essentially introduces and validates the training before a representative audience. Until you can pilot it with, assuming we are going to run it for the entire organization, then we can pick a representative sample. And what representative sample means that can pick about 2 members from every department that play a cardinal role in the company for them to give you feedback about the content that has been designed. And if you get feedback for some areas to be ironed out in terms of crossing your T's and dotting your I's, then you go ahead to make these modifications so that it will be able to address the needs of your targeted audience. Now, following up from the validation is the presumption that all the necessary corrections and modifications have been addressed. And so you can go ahead and implement it. Implementation stage is where you actually, if it is on the job, then you carry it out into maybe a job instructional training. Then you carry it out. If it is off the job now, maybe I'm going to share hotel conference room here. Then you go over there and attend the training program. So that will be the implementation stage. So here the training program is implemented to see if the needed training objectives can be achieved. Right after implementation, we conduct what we call training evaluation. Training evaluation. And the essence of conducting training evaluation is to ascertain whether the training was able to achieve what it intended to achieve. I would say at the designing stage, you threw in some objectives that you want to achieve. So at the evaluation stage, there is the need for us to verify whether we have successfully achieved what we intended to achieve. And it is important for us to evaluate because don't forget, the company has maybe pumped a lot of resources and money into it. And they are also investing a lot of time to make sure the program becomes successful. So are we getting value for money? That is what the evaluation seeks to achieve. Now, according to Kirkpatrick, every training program can be evaluated at 4 main levels. This ranges from reaction, which is level 1, learning, level 2, behavior, level 3, and resource, level 4. Patrick is saying that you can evaluate every training program in 4 main levels. Level 1, reaction. Level 2, learning. Level 3, behavior. Level 4, resource. So what is the reaction one? Reaction level should include measuring reaction of trainees to the program content, formats, instructional techniques, ability, style of trainer, blah, blah, blah. And to see whether it meets their objectives. So a typical reaction assessment will be when, after the semester, I ask you your general impression about how I handled the class. So if I ask you general impression for your opinion and how maybe in the subsequent semesters we can improve upon it, then I'm gauging level 1, and as a reaction level assessment. Level 2, learning. The second level means that we are moving beyond the reaction, and we are now going to test the knowledge base of employees to see whether they have been able to successfully assimilate what they were being trained on. So it is concerned about how well the trainees understood and absorbed the principles, facts, and skills that were being taught. So this may require some form of assessments, such as maybe objective tests. You're kind of saying, so a typical example is end of semester examination. End of semester examination assessment is essentially a level 2 assessment, which will tell me and the school whether you understood or you've absorbed some of the things that where I treated. Again, the quiz that you'll be doing today too can be construed as a level 2 assessment. And the reason why it is important for quizzes to be interspersed, and I said at the learning level, you don't have to wait for the entire training program to end before you start assessing employees. And I said students, for instance, I don't have to wait till the end of the semester before I assess you, because it may be too late for me to remedy the situation if I wait till the end of the training program before I start the assessment. So the basic tenets of level 2 assessment, which is the learning, is to make sure you are able to check whether the trainees are learning. So in your circumstance, whether students are learning or they are just logging in and not actually following what is transpiring. Now, that level 3 is the behavior. Level 3 is behavior. Now, the behavioral assessment also measures the degree to which the learners apply their new skills and knowledge to their job. So essentially, we are trying to ascertain the extent to which the trainees are transferring what they have learned in the course of the training program onto their job. Assuming the essence of the training program was to equip them on the use of computer, okay, and stop the manual filing system. At the behavioral level, we will have to go back to their work premises and monitor whether they are now putting in place some of the things that they learned on how to use computer to create folders and files to keep records. So that would be the behavioral one. And the resource one is where an attempt is made to determine the level of improvement in job performance and also assess the needed maintenance that ensure continuous good performance. So resource level, no, it can actually be done at the individual and organizational level. At the individual level, we are comparing the current performance of the employee after they went for the training program with their previous one to see whether there has been some improvements. Okay, so if there is an escalation and an improvement in the performance of employees, then we can attribute it to the training program that they went for. In the same vein, if because of the improvements in the performance of employees, the company is also recording an appreciation in their profit levels, then we can say that the company is also getting value for their money. So that is the resource level assessment, or level 4. Any question so far? All right. Now, we are done with the processes that can be followed to train employees. We are moving on to specific approaches and as specific methods that can be used to train employees. So I began by saying there are 2 main types of training, either on the job or off the job. And when it comes to the methods too, it can be discussed under whether the method is being employed on the job or off the job. So the first one is what we call job instructional training, JIT, job instructional training. Job instructional training simply means that a learned person, usually a supervisor or a co-worker who is much experienced in the execution of a particular task, is paired with an immature person. And this learned person takes the immature person through series of instructions which are designed to assist the immature person to cognitively process the performance of the job and also practically follow suit. So as the mature person or the experienced person is executing it with the guidance of the instructions, then the person under training will also be following the instructions, and over time, we wean the experienced person off the immature person, so that over time, this weaning is expected to give them the room to also practice on their own. So that is the job instructional training. The cardinal feature of it is that there must be someone who is much experienced, and there should also be properly designed instructions that can be accompanied by the directives of the experienced person who is training the one under training. Now, the little background to this job instructional training method is that it was actually designed and developed after the First World War. And most of these developed nations that felt a lot of casualties during the war. And also when majority of their populace were sent to go and fight during the war, they needed to replace them with people that can actually step into their shoes. But there was no time to take people to colleges or schools to prepare them for the kind of jobs that they were doing. So what they did was that they designed and prepared unequivocal instructions, which after taking one through over time, you will become equipped and ready to do it. Until after the end of the war, most organizations adopted that strategy in training individuals, particularly when it comes to on-the-job training. Then internships. So internships are now said, kind of simple. What is the other name for internship? They are students. Letter second.
Attachment.
Attachment, very good. Attachment. So internship or attachment. Internship also seeks to reduce the disconnects between classroom instructions and what maintains in the world of work. So if you've sat in a classroom over time and you've been introduced to the theoretical underpinnings and the reasoning behind why a particular task is performed the way it is performed, it gets to a point in time where it will be important for you to be introduced to the practicalities of the job. And so the internship will serve as an avenue for the classroom instructions or activities to be augmented by what maintains in the world of work. And it has a number of advantages, both for the organization and the individual going through the attachment. So for the organization, they get a casual look or a better perception of the individual who is coming to work under their dispensation, so that if there is the need for them to hire the person, they can use it as part of their selection decision. Then for the intern too, it will help them to have a clause on their CV that they have a certain amount of experience in the performance of a particular task. Apprenticeship. So apprenticeship is also a type of on-the-job training program whereby an apprentice is paired with an experienced person for him to guide the apprentice in the acquisition of certain skills or crafts. So apprenticeship training is usually used in training people for jobs in skilled crafts such as hairdressing, carpentry, plumbing, typesetting, welding. So anything that involves the use of hardcore skills or crafts. So these days, I'm kind of say cry. So cake, arts and crafts. They call it arts and crafts. So anything that requires the use of your skills or your crafts to perform a particular task can be construed under the apprenticeship. Then usually during the apprenticeship program, depending on the number of years that one will be required to go through it, the individual, the apprentice, is not expected to be remunerated because at that point in time, you are still immature and you are learning under a certified person. So because of the grooming you are experiencing, you are not expected to be remunerated. All right. Now let's move on to the off-the-job training programs. Off-the-job training programs. I would say first ones now they are carried out when the work is actually ongoing. But off-the-job training program, it can be carried out in a facility, which is even outside the organizational premises. Okay. First one is simulation exercise. So simulation is a training approach that uses a training site set up to mimic or be identical with the work site. These day and age, some of these simulations can even be computerized so that you operate in a virtual world whereby you get the same experience as it maintains in a website. So in this setting, trainees can learn under realistic conditions, but be away from the pressures of the production schedule. And one type of the simulation is called vestibule training, which occurs in special facilities that replicates the equipment and work demands of the job. So examples of vestibule training include how airlines use simulators to train their pilots and cabin attendants, and also how astronauts are trained. In fact, does anyone work with STC? STC, State Transport Corporation. They now have a driving simulation center, which they've been using in training their drivers. So what happens is that, in fact, these days, most driving schools have some of these simulators in place. So after the theoretical training, then they will introduce you to this simulator, and you'll be driving you will be in a particular environment or like, which is just like the front seat where drivers are expected to apply the brakes and other pedals. But the difference is that it is just a simulator. It gives you the experience that you are likely to get when you are actually driving on the streets. And based on the mistakes that you'll be making over there and the corrections that you'll be getting from your instructor, they will gradually introduce you to the actual driving which maintains on our streets. And that is what STC is currently using to be training its drivers. In fact, they launched it, is it last year thereabouts, which they use in training their drivers. That would be a typical example of a simulator. And at these days in Sosokra, most of the games that we play and the consoles that come with it, it can, particularly if you are using the 3D ones, they can give you, depending on the game you are playing, if it is a car racing or a motor racing, you may experience something which is similar to that of the real world. So all these simulators are designed to mimic some of these activities. Now, still on the off-the-job training program, specific ones, you can also use role-playing to train employees. Now, role-playing simply means that the employees will be given role skits. And then those in the cinematography industry, they call it scripts. So we give actors a script for them to act it out. In role playing too, we will give the trainees what we call role skits for them to act out what has been directed on the skit. So let's say we are running a marketing training program for a particular marketing department in an organization, a marketing training program. Now, a typical role skit will require that one person is presented with a skit to act as a marketer. Then another person will also be presented with a skit to act as a customer of this marketer. In the the skit will require you to sell the customer a pen. And you are expected to act out as a marketer of this pen. So one of the advantages of this role playing is that the individual is expected to think on their feet. And when you repeat this over time, it improves your ability of thinking on your feet as compared to how you act out in the real world of work. And the customer too will also be behaving as if they are actual customers. At the end of the day, you are going to get feedback from those that will be watching the way you played your role. So the facilitators and your colleagues as well. And based on these feedbacks, it is expected that you will incorporate and internalize some of the lessons to improve upon how in future you'll be marketing your company or your services to customers. So that would be a typical example of a role play. But a major challenge associated with role playing is that many trainees construe them or they do not take them serious. They see it as a form of playing or socializing during the workshop. And so they may not take it serious. And this makes it quite problematic when it comes to transferring some lessons from role playing onto the world of work. Then case studies here. I don't know. Last semester, did you solve any case study in your end of semester examination?
No, sir.
Oh,
No, sir.
okay, so it means more. It's probably because you are in level 100. That was why maybe you did not face a case study. Okay, so case study also, when we say we are using it as a way of training employees of the job, it means that the participants of the training program will be presented with a case which may be fictitious or a real-time situation that was faced by a particular company. And filled in this case are some facts about a situation which a particular company confronted and the sort of decisions that they use in resolving it. Now, then the problems that are also being confronted by the company will be alluded. Thereafter, questions will be asked about how best the company can overcome the challenges or problems that they are confronting. So essentially, the participants or the trainees are expected to read the case thoroughly, back and forth, understand the key facts in it, then use the facts and the lessons that they've also learned, the lessons they've learned in classroom and during the course of the training program to assist in resolving the problem in the case. After that, a feedback will be provided by the facilitator. So a major challenge with case studies is that it tends to be, it tends to look backward into issues that have already been resolved or situations that have already occurred and that had already been handled. And even though lessons can be drawn from these cases, the world of work and the challenges that it surrounds the business environment with is such that sometimes you are confronted with unforeseen or supervening events that these cases may not readily provide answers to. Okay, so best practice recommends that activities like role playing and case studies should be used to supplement classroom activities or some of the training activities which will be ensuing in the course of, let's say, maybe a lecture, a seminar, a presentation that trainees are receiving as a particular workshop. So classroom and our conference training. Classroom one is the one we are having now. So it means that you go for a particular training program and depending on the focal area, it may be for a short period or a longer period. And the features of this one is that it's usually led by a facilitator who presents some information to the trainees for them to assimilate. And at the end of the day, an evaluation is done to verify whether learning has taken place. And when we say learning has taken place, we expect to see a relatively permanent change in the cognition, affect, and behavior of the participants. And this can be done at 4 main levels, which I presented earlier on according to Kirkpatrick, ranging from the reaction, learning, behavior, and finally results. Okay. Now, the development methods. So just as the training one we can have on the job and off the job, development we can have job site and off site, and I say on the job development programs and off the job. So what are some of them? So the first one is coaching. Coaching. In fact, coaching has been construed as one of the oldest techniques that can be adopted to prepare individuals, promising candidates in a given organization for much more challenging tasks ahead. Now, it involves daily training and feedback given to employees by their immediate supervisor. Sometimes it may not necessarily be your immediate supervisor, but it could be a knowledgeable person in your department who may not necessarily be your supervisor, but because of the knowledge that they command, it suffices that you are paired with such people to direct you in your career path so that you can also emerge successful as they have. Now, it is also construed as a continuous process. So coaching involves a continuous process of learning by doing. So it will not just be a series of instructions from the coach, but it will also have room for you to be doing what you are picking from the coach. And as the coach observes, he will be able to give you feedback on where you are not getting it right and how you can overcome such areas. For effective coaching, a healthy and open relation might exist between the employees and the designated coach, so whether the supervisor or the manager, because it is supposed to be a continuous process. And if there isn't a healthy relationship between the employee in question and the supervisor, then it means that there will be a lot of friction in terms of carrying it out. Now, a distinction can be made between coaching and mentoring. Coaching and mentoring. And I say mentoring. Coaching and mentoring, depending on the secondary school you attended. So unlike coaching where the employee has to follow the instructions or the directive of the coach, in mentoring, the relationship ensues between a mentor and a protege. And it is, the mentor can decide who becomes their protege. The protege can also decide who becomes their mentor. And unlike in coaching, where the mentee has to follow the directives of the coach, in mentoring, room is provided for the mentee to even challenge some of the suggestions which are coming from the coach. And challenge it in a healthy manner, not in a confrontational manner. The reasoning behind giving such room is that the protege is being brought up to also become a mentor in future. So they must understand the reasoning behind all the instructions that they are following. And that is why room is created for you to sometimes question the directives. But like it occurs in football, in coaching, when you are given a particular role to play or a directive, you are expected to follow it to the latter. Job rotation. In fact, job rotation, I explained it when I was we were doing job design. Essentially means that you are moving promising candidates or employees from one job to the other in order for them to master and acquire transferable skills. So as part of using it as a developmental technique. There is an example here whereby a promising young manager may spend about 3 months at the plant, 3 months at the corporate planning, and 3 months at purchasing. So that when you eventually become a manager, you will have a comprehensive overview of the activities which maintain at the plant section, at the planning, corporate planning section, at the purchasing, and also at other functional departments. Committee assignments. This also means that the individual in question who has been earmarked as a promising candidate and being groomed for a higher portfolio in future will be given an assignment to participate in important committees in the organization. And the core objective of this committee assignments or their participation is that it's supposed to broaden their knowledge base and experience, which can help them understand the personalities, so the individuals they are going to deal with, the issues or problems that are also handled at the committee levels, and also the processes that are used in governing the organization. So an example is that assigning an employee to a safety committee in the company may give them safety background they will need to become good supervisors. And also they may experience the problems which are involved in maintaining employee safety awareness, so that when eventually they become the managers of the company, such things will not come to them as a news. Then classroom courses and degrees. So this one is just like the one I explained under the training, except that here the duration of the classroom activities is longer. So it may be going for a 4-year degree program or a 2-year master's program, or maybe a 3-year PhD program, and so on and so forth. Now, a major advantage of these classrooms and degrees programs is that it helps the individual in question, the trainee, to understand the philosophical underpinnings, the reasoning behind why a particular job is performed the way it is done. So once you are able to appreciate some of these philosophies, when you are given the opportunity to manage or maybe develop a similar job, that sort of underpinning will also influence your style of thinking and come out with something which is more suitable. But a major challenge with the classroom technique is that it tends to be one way. It's more or less like a one-way street, whereby the trainees become very much passive listeners. So they will just be assimilating the information, particularly if it is carried out in a situation where the authoritarian nature of the facilitator does not allow room for questions and answers to be interspersed with the lectures. And to address the passivity of listeners and also encourage learners' participation, you can intersperse the classroom techniques with other methods such as case studies and role play. So when it comes to role play, you can actually hand out role skills to every member of the class to act it out and get feedback. In the same vein, you can also present a case study to them for every member to make their contribution. By engaging them in that regard, it is expected that the level of passivity that has been earmarked as characterizing the classroom method will be reduced. Then sabbatical leaves or leaves of absence. Okay, so this one is highly pronounced in academic circles, even though in most multinational enterprises, they also extend it to their workforce, having worked for a particular number of years. So what this essentially means is that the employee in question will be given a paid time off the job for them to go and develop themselves and also rejuvenate themselves. And during this paid time of the job, it is expected that they can use it to acquire higher credentials that they are currently not having. So that if maybe at the moment you have just a first degree, then you may be aspiring for a master's degree. The sabbatical leave may be an opportunity for you to accomplish that. Okay, so any question? Any question? Any question?
No question.
No,
Hey.
sir.
All right, so if there are no questions, let me take my attendance. In fact, I have a lot of questions for you, but you will find them in the quiz that we are going to do today. Exactly 12:30, the portal will open for you to commence the quiz. And please, it is just 10 questions. So make sure between the hours of 12:30 and 1 o'clock, you dedicate 50 minutes for these 10 questions. Make sure you get a place where the internet connectivity is strong like you are having now, so that you do not get any bad experiences, okay? Let me quickly stop the recording.